Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Edward Scissorhands has nothing on me. Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi everyone, I'm Marty Levinson and welcome to Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine.
For the identity of the real Marty Levinson, please stay tuned for the Northtown News Magazine.
Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Come on, baby, don't you?
Hey there, I am really Marty Levinson. Don't let anybody fool you. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show with the greatest cameraman around, Sonny Hirsch, and your host, Avi Myers.
Thank you, Marty. Avi Myers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. Dial us up on the web at ntnm.org. Follow the links from there to all our shows on YouTube. The last 6 years are on there. The counter finally started working again. We were doing about 1,700 shows a week. Then all of a sudden it was like piddly. It was driving me nuts. And all of a sudden now it's like, we're back up somewhere around 1,500. So I'm very pleased to see that counter moving in the right direction. And community policing, we're very big on, caps24.org. Community policing is alive and well in the 24th District. I'd like to apologize to any of you who actually try to listen to WBEZ at 9:15 in the morning. I got a call from Tony Saperano, I think his name is, who's the host yesterday, who asked me to be on a panel today, and we were going to do it via phone. But if the phone rang, I didn't hear it, and I was just a few feet away, and I hate getting up that early in the morning. So I apologize to anybody that wanted to listen. Anyway, it's my pleasure for the second time to welcome a guest. And, I've always, as those of you know, I've always been into neighborhood news. I never even tried to work for a daily paper, although I did have a short stint when I was in college with the Daily Defender. Because I've always liked the idea of neighborhood and ethnic papers, and I like more of a weekly schedule than a daily schedule. You can get some perspective on things that you can't when you've got to put things out on a daily basis. But my very favorite neighborhood paper on the web is the Wells Park Bulldog, and I think it's very well done, and it's done in the style a neighborhood paper should be, for a lot of reasons, and we'll be talking about it. I'm talking about Patrick Boylan, a 2-time Lissagore Award winner,
Hello.
Not to mention a 9-time winner of various awards during the short time you've done this.
Yes, it's been wonderful to take citizens and ordinary citizens and have them win awards. And they are not generally professional journalists who have won those awards.
Well, that's very cool. I like that, but I'm sure your guidance helps a lot because you do know what you're doing.
It feels good, yeah. It really feels good to have that be in our CV, so to speak.
It's funny because I was reading something about, the Huffington Post, and one of their qualities was that they could get people to work for them for nothing.
We do try to pay them a little bit of a token.
Yeah.
We felt that it was important for artists, writers, and photographers to receive a token. And we tell them, if we had more, we would give you more. But this is a token of respect. And I think any artist needs at least a token of respect that you have value and your work has value. So yeah.
By the way, I agree with you. When I started, I was going to show you a copy before I forgot. Hopefully I'll show you afterwards. When I published Jewish Chicago as a monthly, it was actually a very well done. It had very high quality, which is probably one of the reasons I went broke. And my first editor, he had a budget of $1,000 a month for articles. Among other things, he exceeded the budget, not to mention his general dishonesty. And I canned him. And the same people he was trying to pay, he signed for $600. Because, well, first of all, they would write for me for $75.
Yeah.
They wanted to get their stuff in there. Basically I couldn't afford that kind of money. I couldn't even afford the $75. But you're right, people deserve something.
Avi, we do this because of passion. There's a passion in you for community policing that is evident in the Northtown News, and there's a passion in us about schools that we try and make very evident in the Bulldog. But we cover other things too, just like you do.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, well, first of all, I want to tell you, I saw you had an article about the principal of one of the local schools.
Yeah, we're trying. Yeah.
And people don't realize how important a principal is to parents.
Yeah,
You know, it really is. It sets a tone for a whole school,
it does, yeah.
and it's very important. Not to mention the fact that you have really good coverage of the sports, but from women's teams to like North Park College.
Yeah, the sports coverage got us in the door of the schools where we could cause trouble to the schools by demanding that they give us documents and things like that. And it really did help that the kids got positive coverage. We go to some of these Chicago public school games. Amundsen and Lakeview are in our area, and there's nobody in the stands. That's not true for Amundsen, but look, we had
I
a
started
shooting.
out as a sports writer, by the way.
Yeah,
And plus, I was a play-by-play basketball announcer when I was 17 in Morris, Illinois.
People dismiss sports, but sports writing is about heroes, and it's really about the human condition on a very basic level.
I loved it.
Yeah, it's a great way to learn how to write and to do a good story. It's tougher than you think. But in this city...
Oh, and by the way, Mayfair Junior College, there were usually about 4 people in the stands.
The Irish American Heritage Center.
That's right. That's where it is now. And it was Mayfair
Yeah.
Amundsen, because the night school was at Amundsen,
Okay.
where the high school is. But basically, it was me, the coach's wife, and 2 Major League Scouts,
Yeah.
because it was a really seriously good team. And a bunch of those guys got drafted.
They were good kids. They were trying to play. Now look, in Chicago, we had a shooting at Morgan Park when Morgan Park played Simeon in football in September. And then we had another shooting in January, Morgan Park and Simeon. You don't, one of the mom of one of the victims, it wasn't a shooting in September, I'm sorry, there was an alleged shots fired and the crowd scattered from the football stands, and somebody was sent to the hospital with a stabbing. That's the journalism in me trying to get it correct. The mom in the second shooting said, I thought he was safe. There were 40 security guards there at Chicago State University. Geez, we hate to tell that type of story. That's a terrible story to tell parents, that your kid got shot, that your kid went to a game and violence broke out outside. We want to be positive about the schools. We want to show that they're doing good things. And sometimes the schools make it tough to do that. And you are right. It's that principal who calls the shots. And we need to watch these principals fairly closely.
No, I agree. You know, being involved in not just community policing and dealing with them, but I used to be president of the community council here.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I never, you know, like if I don't have any kids, but if I did have kids, I would have sent them to Jewish schools. It's still very important for the whole neighborhood, for the public schools to be well run.
So we were talking, when we were talking about me coming on board, we were talking about how this all got started for the Bulldog and for Northtown News. So you're 22 years into this. What was it like back then?
Oh, well, first of all, I got to tell you, Mike Moses, who will no longer talk to me, his wife is mad at me, but he's in Florida anyway. He was president of the community council at the time, and he heard about cable access, and he approached me, and I told him he was crazy. Nobody in their right mind would watch that stuff. And I turned it on, and I looked at it, and I thought that. So anyway, he really, like, he wouldn't stop. He had a way of getting to me. So I went to a bunch of classes. I went through 3 different classes, and after the second class we started, there were 6 of us on the crew. We started doing shows for each other. So I really felt like it was fun doing it, but nobody's watching. And after about 1.5 years, I was ready to quit, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
The Northtown Community Council was a nonprofit 501c3, and I couldn't give my opinion. I had to be nice about it. The Northtown Community Council is now long dead. Okay. But it was a 501c3. I couldn't opine at all. You know, it was their deal, even though I wasn't really getting any money from it.
Yeah.
So I had Howie Carroll on the show, who was our state senator, and one of the biggest pieces of filth I've ever met in my life. And I had to sit there and smile and be polite. And in those days, we were doing 3 9-minute interviews per show, every show. And he was lying through his teeth, and he was frankly, he could have made my tomatoes grow to be 2 pounds or 3 pounds each. You know, if we were filming at the house. I mean, we used to film over at Warren Park. So I was ready to quit. I couldn't stand having the guy on. I just couldn't stand not saying what I really thought. Anyhow, the week the show was on, within the next day, 2 people approached me and said, I never knew how full of bleep Howie Carroll was till I saw him on your show.
Okay.
And I talked to both of them, and they were telling me that usually when you watch TV, it's a 30-second soundbite, maybe 15, maybe 45, but you don't get a chance to really see somebody for that long
Yes.
and let them talk about themselves, and where people can really get a real opinion for themselves of what the person is like. And I started to realize then the show actually has some value.
Yeah.
And actually, the thing that really clinched it was the next week when I was over at the OSCO, you know, the person behind the counter says, oh, wow, you're much taller than you look on TV.
You're, what's it, Stu Levinson?
Marty Levinson.
Marty Levinson. Hi, Marty.
But anyway, that actually, I found out, I people, when I go somewhere, I get noticed now. Actually, that's good and that's bad. Because I never ran a picture of myself ever in any of my papers, and nobody knew what I looked like.
Yeah.
And I could walk the streets like a regular person. And not that it's so popular that like I'm getting mobbed like a star, but people know and people mention, and it's a topic of conversation when I go out, especially if I do something interesting.
Yeah. It's 22 years ago you had I think we had the community press through Learner.
That's right. I actually had some of the Learner guys on. And by the way, Greg Hines actually named me in 1991, I believe it was, or 1992, the Dirty Political Trickster of the Year.
Oh, dear.
And you know what? The fact of the matter is I was being honest and forthright.
Yeah.
But in those days, Learner was basically a gay-run paper with the gay agenda, as Greg Hines is a same-sex anal intercourser, which he's more than entitled to be. It's his life. And I was for the candidate in the neighborhood that didn't want to see civil unions. But that wasn't the reason I was for him. I felt that was an oblivious issue.
Yeah.
So in that year, there were 37 editorial endorsements in the paper.
Yeah.
And 36 of those endorsements mentioned gay, lesbian, HIV, LGBT, whatever.
Yeah.
So it changed afterwards, but when Greg Hines and other people were there, that was.
Yeah.
And by the way, the Learner paper actually was. You look something like your front page looks something like the kind of thing they used to do.
Really? I didn't know that.
A little bit, because I'll tell you, one of the things I really liked is on the front. Well, first of all, page 1 was different in every paper. All the rest of it was the same.
Okay.
They owned their own printing press on Howard near Clark.
Yeah.
So all they did is change the plates for page 1. Everything else was common.
Okay.
But on page 1, they would list community meetings, and anytime they mentioned a community meeting, that meeting was going to get a good crowd. I mean, people read it, people, at least paid attention to it, and they tried to help neighborhood organizations. And I've always been a big fan of neighborhood organizations.
Yeah.
Because almost all of them, even if I don't agree with them, are trying to do good.
I think people who are not involved don't understand how much work is involved in putting together anything simple, like a community meeting. And we try and recognize that too in the Bulldog. Now, in 22 years, you've seen a lot change. You've seen Pioneer Press come in and leave after purchasing Learner, and Ron Ronick is over there, an inside booster. And you've seen the animals like me come up and down. And in the last week or so, we saw Michael Forche.
Yeah.
I have a community meeting. At the time of the taping, we don't know what was said at the community meeting because this is happening beforehand. But so we have this thing about community journalism and things, and we're talking about passion and stuff. Now I brought something. We'll show this.
Sure.
Now, I don't know. Can you see this, Sonny? Can you get a nice little shot of this and the sediment in the bottom?
Yeah, I see that.
Now, years ago, I was watching a program called Connections, and they showed something like this on Connections. Don't you want to know what the heck this thing is? It's obviously not spring water pure. We won't answer the question today, but the Bulldog's interested in knowing what this stuff is in here. That's journalism. Why is this happening? It's a very basic question. Why, what, who, what, where, when, how, and why. And when we can answer those questions, we're doing a good job. And today, I'm not aware of any competitors to the Northtown. When we started the Bulldog 3 years ago, there really wasn't any competition. Mike Forche had Center Square Journal. Today there's DNA Info. There's a site called 60625 News. Every Block is out there with a good conversation going. Edgeville Buzz, DNA Info. There, you say that, I said that. And gosh, there's a lot more
that's
competition.
the one that he hasn't posted for over a week in any category. So I'm wondering if they exist still.
Well, things do. Things go and come, and they're passions of love. And when you lose them,
People don't realize how hard it is to make money. As a matter of fact, a number of businessmen in this area approached me to challenge Lerner. And actually, when I was still in college, I was approached and was stupid enough to become the editor of the community paper here. And we covered basically from Lawrence Avenue to Howard Street plus Evanston, and from the river to the lake. And it was great. I mean, we had a lot of fun. We did it. But in those days, there were neighborhood businesses, not these chain stores that look alike in every single neighborhood. These neighborhood businesses, there wasn't a lot of competition for advertising dollars. And if you were being read, they were willing to advertise or at least give you a shot.
and what Forche is saying in his posts is that he's not able to sell advertising to these local merchants. I agree with him. I have to tell you that online, we both belong to Forche and I both belong to a group of publishers like this, of small independent sites. They are not taking this very nicely, that this is happening. You have to build a moat, basically, around your product. I'm not sure if the Bulldog has it. It's more of a product of love, and we're going to be surviving on an app that we're selling out.
Yeah, I did read about that. That was very interesting. I mean, you were saying that and by the way, I think it's smart because one of the reasons I would never, also in terms of this neighborhood, with all the different Indians, Pakistanis, Russians, Orthodox Jews, and all the rest of it, you don't have the commonality that a neighborhood paper would have worked for in those days because they each have their own publication.
And they're appealing to their community of interest. This is such a large city that you can have a Pakistani newspaper and an Indian newspaper
And actually
operating
multiple ones.
Yeah, Polish newspaper is another one that you see that, but especially South Asian ones. You see Koreans.
I still remember Ziggy Zarabski from the Polish Daily Zagoda.
What is there, like 3 or 4 Korean daily newspapers in this town? It's insane. And they're big, thick papers when you find them in the Korean stores. So they're supporting their newspapers and things. And the geographic, running a line around a neighborhood and saying, I'm going to cover this news, like Lerner did, just doesn't seem to work. You have to, like you did, you said, hey, we're going to cover policing in this area. Like I did, we're covering schools, and accidentally we fell into this app. So we're going to sell the app. It's easier to sell the app than to sell advertising, so what the heck?
And it's a pretty cool app, too. I mean, we're not allowed to give details about something you're going to sell, but basically it's something that, like a Chamber of Commerce or something like that.
It's a Chamber of Commerce thing, yeah.
And, it's a very, very cool thing. I did check it out.
Thank you. Yeah, I designed it. And hey,
nice job.
Yeah, personal design, and then obviously I don't know all the coding. I had somebody help me with that, but yeah, I put the initial thing together. It is cool, and we hope we see people.
Well, by the way,
it.
I still might have a Captain Midnight Dakota ring,
but
actually I never had one, so it's before my time.
We're talking about community journalism. The Northtown News magazine is doing that, and the Bulldog is doing that, and how do people support that? I mean, if you like this program, how do you support Avi doing it? Well, you do have ways that people can support it.
Well, actually, in my case, it actually supports Jewish Chicago.
Okay. And Jewish Chicago is a publication, folks, that comes out at least during the elections, right?
Well, it comes out during the elections, and that's about it. I used to put it out monthly, and it's the best way to become a well-to-do publisher is start out filthy rich, which I didn't.
And then you lose half of your income throwing it at the publication.
even with Jewish Chicago, you're not kidding. Even with Jewish Chicago, the fact of the matter is one of the lessons I learned a long time ago, and we are running out of time unless I make this a whole show, which maybe I will. Okay, we'll do a whole show. Anyway, one of the lessons I learned when I worked at the Sentinel was that it takes years and years usually to make money, even in those days. So you've got to have a side business you can operate.
Yeah.
So in the case of Jewish Chicago, I spent something like this is in 1982. I spent over $4,000 for typesetting, graphics, paste up, layout, the whole shot. I figured out real quick that I could lease a machine, have an operator full time for about $2,700 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and still have 2.5 weeks left over to sell stuff to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually became the business. For a lot of years, I was putting out other people's stuff.
You were doing contract work for other people,
Well,
sort of like what I'm doing with that.
contract. I mean, I would, because you know what? One of the things I don't like about business these days is I never had anybody sign a contract. Everything was on a handshake.
Yeah.
And if I couldn't do that with somebody, I didn't want to deal with them. So I was actually putting out things. I mean, some of it was really boring, like ad books for organizations.
Mm-hmm.
But I was doing 40 of them a year, and the average job was like $3,500 and up.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them as much as $20,000. I did like, I did like hundreds of newsletters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's in the days of typesetting before people had computers and it became a different deal.
I remember. Yeah.
And not to mention the fact that, I also, with my experience in journalism, I was able to make their products better. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really charge for it. I just charged for the time for typesetting and graphics. Mm-hmm. But basically, people kept nagging me to keep doing Jewish Chicago.
Yeah.
And I started putting it out every now and then for elections, and it just became more popular. Actually, what really made it click was the judges latched on to me. And my niche market is judges. You've got to have a niche. Like in typesetting, my niche was I had the only Hebrew outside of New York and Israel.
Really?
Yeah.
Was this the
Before
old
computers.
IBM, the big old thing looks like a
this
selectric?
was,
Or?
I had a CompuGraphic machine.
Okay.
But after that lease was up, I went to an AM Verityper because they could go right to left and do the Hebrew. So I used to do even things like feed grain labels for export to Israel. I did whiskey labels. I would even do books that were entirely in Hebrew.
Yeah.
Although I did find that if I tried to train somebody who wasn't Jewish to do Hebrew, even if they got 19 out of 20 letters right, that's an awful lot of mistakes. Think about proofreading. That's a mistake every 4 words.
In the old days, somebody had to proofread all of the copy on these things because the typist, no matter how good, would always make a mistake.
Always,
I remember back in those days, for me it was the early 80s, and we had an old, I was doing a paper for a community college, so the student publication, I was the manager of it. It was after college for me. It was my first job. So yeah, and God, the layout and stuff, I still remember, like, I have a big, like, nick someplace where I have lost part of my finger on the layout table. And I remember the guy I was working for yelling at me, "Don't bleed on the copy." And that was, so like, pull it away.
That's not a joke because for people who don't know, I mean, you know what? I still remember the early days of the Reader. One of their paste-up guys, you could tell who it was if you really had access, because they'd be using Scotch tape and you'd see the guy's fingerprint. Oh, and by the way, they actually used this old IBM machine.
Yeah.
And it actually, like, it had a memory, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But it was basically a fancy typewriter.
Yes, I think that's what we probably used.
And, it was like a Selectric.
Yeah.
But it had a different font thing, and it printed the ink a little better than what a regular Selectric did.
Yeah.
And that's what they were using. As a matter of fact, at Mayfair Junior College, it was letterpress. And if we had to make a change, the printers would yell their head off. Also, they would proofread everything. One thing about proofreaders and typesetters in the old days, they were very well read because they hit every single keystroke. It's not like today where anything will go through a spell check even if it's the wrong word.
Yeah.
So you've still got to be careful. I mean, like in the last Jewish Chicago, I actually referred to Mitt Romney as George. So, which is one of the dumbest things I did, and my copy editor did not catch it at all.
Yeah, those embarrassing things. When we do an error, now we can update, and we keep track of the errors. And we have a policy of trying to keep the errors under a certain number per 1,000 or something like that. And you update it, and you see it in our paper from time to time at the bottom. It'll say updated at such and such a time to correct this error.
I'll tell you,
and that includes the spelling errors too.
No matter how careful I was, and when Jewish Chicago was a monthly, I had a full-time editor, and actually by full-time, I mean like 80 to 100 hours a week, grossly underpaid, and people were fighting for the job. You know, when I had openings, and I had 6 full-time employees, and I had a typesetter that knew English back and forth, and I've never ever put out a publication without.
And
an
you
error.
had a copy editor who or copy reader who could proof Hebrew too, which
Well,
was
actually,
probably
we weren't
pretty
doing
unusual.
Hebrew in the paper. We never.
Okay.
Oh, just for the Treasure Island ads, they insisted on Hebrew.
Okay, very good. So yeah, the loss of copy editors in publications in general, people do notice it. They notice it in the Sun-Times. For example, the Sun-Times last. Should we beat up on the Sun-Times? They had that. They had the inaugural published for February instead of January. Very embarrassing thing.
You know, I got to tell you, I see more errors today when I'm reading stories on the web from the New York Times. I really like reading the Washington Post the best. That's my favorite paper. But the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Tribune, the Sun-Times, there isn't a day that goes by if I don't really read it that I don't find errors I never used to find.
Yeah, I would if I had my wish, the first thing I would do is get a copy editor to beat me up, because I'm sure I could use it.
My old journalism professor at Mayfair, Marion Stiller, was a wonderful lady. Her dream was, after she retired from teaching, she had a summer home out in Indiana somewhere. I don't remember where exactly, and she wanted a 70-year-old proofreader and typesetter who would get everything right. I mean, that to her was the second most important thing she wanted, was somebody who really understood. And I'll tell you, when we used to typeset things outside, and I was also editor of the Columbia College paper, the guys who did the typesetting were very literate and actually read and paid attention to what they were writing. And I still remember one guy once telling me, your stuff is really not bad at all. It's really not full of crap like everybody else's.
High compliment.
From him, that was, as a matter of fact, which is kind of cool.
So we only have a minute or two left, I am imagining.
Go.
How do people support community journalism like this? What do we do moving forward? People like the Bulldog and Uptown Update and the Northtown News Magazine. How do we move forward to make sure that there's funding available so that we can provide people with a good product?
Well, actually, in the case of the paper, because Sonny Hirsch has bought equipment and all the rest of it, our costs are very low. I enjoy doing it. It does help support Jewish Chicago. But I think your idea with an app, and I still think the answer is still yet to be found.
It is, yeah.
But I think the idea of having something on the side like that, I think it's actually, the more I thought about it, it's smart that you're not wasting your time pursuing advertising. Because it's minimal.
We did a budget, and we decided advertising would be 12 to 18% of what we needed. 12 to 18%. We took the entire book, Avi, of CSJ, the Center Square Journal, ours, a number of other magazines, into a journalism class. What I'm talking about, folks, is we looked at how much ads could be sold if we sold everything out. It was $56,000. Now that's gross, that's not net. You have to pay a salesman out of that, so you're only getting $30,000, $35,000, and out of that you can pay your bills. I got to tell you, that's people like Mike, who has an MBA, that's not going to keep him in a business.
No, and as a matter of fact, I did read what you sent me along those lines, and that was it really opened up my eyes about this, because, and also I found a whole bunch of other places I didn't even know existed. And I still don't know what AOL is going to do, even with Ariana Huffington, with their little mini websites.
Yeah, we've got patches. We've got patches here. They're trying to sell advertising. They've lost millions of dollars, and they estimate that 11% of the sites will be profitable or are profitable. That means at some point the other 88% are going to be called in to answer, and either they're going to find a resolution or they're going to be closed, and I think they're going to be closed.
I think a lot of places are going to be closed, and I think, like you said, and one of the things I really like about you, besides for the fact that you won probably more awards than I have in journalism, I've done more for the TV show, is that it's really a labor of love with you.
I got
and that's
this great
the most
haircut.
important thing.
Thank you.
Anyway, you know what? We really got to close things up right now. Mickey's hands are there. So Patrick Boylan, editor, publisher, chief cook and bottle washer of the Wells Park Bulldog. If people would like to read the paper or contact you, where do they hit?
WellsParkBulldog.com. Facebook, The Chicago Bulldog, with periods between each word, and T, C, and B are capitalized. And
from my standpoint, it is the best neighborhood newspaper in Chicago, period. And you do a great job.
Thank you, Avi.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonny. Bye, everybody. See you next week. Bye-bye.